First of all, thank you all for coming. Greatly appreciate it. We know it's a little thick, but it's the island, y'all. So, enjoy. And we are very pleased that you've come out to spend a little time for us this morning. And I'm about to introduce you to a young lady that I think is important that we all know. And I would ask you when you leave here to share her story as well. Too often we don't understand kind of, if you will, the power behind the throne. And she is one of those people that I think it's fair to say, and you'll find out in just a few minutes just how powerful she is. So let me and you gave her a round of applause, but let's give her another. She is, and this is an extraordinary thing for a black woman to be placed in this situation. Director of the OMB, and that's Office of Management and Budget. And I will tell you, having covered government for as long as I have, that is a legitimate office. They used to give us HUD and some other things. They were like, let them move the buses and let them know. This is money. This is money. So please give another round of applause to Shalanda Young. So lovely to see you. Let's get a little bit about who you are. Louisiana girl. Talk to us about being raised in Clinton, Louisiana, so we can tell geographically for folks who don't know where that is. And I understand you were born in Zachary, though.
So thank you for saying Clinton. I have a almost 95-year-old grandmother who is still with us, and hopefully we get to the 95th birthday in a few months. But she gets really mad when I say Baton Rouge. But I usually say Baton Rouge for ease. It's about 45 minutes outside of Baton Rouge. Very small town, under 2,000 people, and shrinking by the day, like a lot of rural communities. So I tell people, I bring the black experience. I also bring rural experience. One party doesn't own the rural experience. We have a lot of our people in small towns trying to make it. And let me tell you, it's tough. We think of urban cities. It's hard to get out of these small towns. And so everything I do, I get to bring that lens and hopefully bring their stories also to Washington.
Were you always a numbers person growing up?
No. I tell people I don't do math, I do budgets. That's different. I need Excel like everybody else, a calculator, and a whole lot of staff. It's about priority setting. It's about telling a story. The president likes to say, and his father said this, don't tell me what you value, show me your budget and I'll tell you what you value. It is not numbers on a piece of paper. And as soon as you dissuade yourself of that, you'll see the importance of putting together priorities, really. Like, you have all these people who get to decide how many Head Starts are available in your community, who gets the WIC program, who gets child care. All of these things are decided by people who work in my agency, people who work where I used to work in Congress for the Appropriations Committee. It's really important. I didn't know any of this growing up where I grew up.
What about public service or politics as a younger person? Was that something that always interested you?
Favorite class was civics.
Really?
I would have had a minor in history, but my mother told me I had 4 years and I was out. And she was like, you need to drop that minor and move on and graduate. And as I paid off my student loans, I appreciated that. I didn't need any extra time or money added to the balance. But I've always enjoyed history, civics, government. It was just something I think it was kind of born in me. My grandmother was a school teacher. Mother worked for city government. In taxes, I go to work with her where she collected business taxes. So I didn't think about it until I was older, but I just kind of went on a different stage, but of service.
Talk to folks about what you find most exhilarating in your position and most confounding in your position.
They're probably the same thing. People in D.C. are people. I worked in Congress for nearly 15 years. So now I have to work with the same people I used to see every day, now trying to get the president's priorities through. And it is confounding why we have to have these debt ceiling, brinksmanship, partisanship, You all don't wait till the last minute to do stuff in regular life. Most Americans don't wait till the last minute. You certainly wouldn't get credit from your bank if you operated the way we do in the federal government. But it's democracy. And what's the alternative? I like working for this president because of his foreign service experience. And he came back when we were doing debt ceiling, and he said that was the number one thing leaders asked of him when he would join the G7 meetings. What's going to happen with the debt ceiling? Because if we're not good, the rest of the world isn't good. And that includes other world powers, but that also includes poor countries. Had we not worked out a deal there, what would have happened to the global economy? And it really puts everything into perspective.
I want you to talk a little bit about your position being a black woman and dealing with a lot of white men in particular. For all of the Black Girl Magic T-shirts and posts we like to give to ourselves and the flowers we deserve, the world doesn't always see us that way, particularly in certain positions. Give me a sense of how you've dealt with that.
I see myself that way. I may have come from a small town without a last name of pedigree, but my family, like a lot of our families, instill in us, nobody's better than you and you're not better than anybody. And when you tell your children that, I now have an almost 2-year-old, it sticks. You carry yourself a certain way, and I really didn't question whether or not I belonged. I had a little imposter syndrome and tried to take the tail off of some of my words and not be as country as I. It turns out people react better when you are yourself and when you're authentic. You don't learn that until you a little older. It's actually, what's appealing about you to other people. And it makes people trust you. You can get polished anyway. I don't hire people who are just smart. They come a dime a dozen. Who are you? Can I trust you? And if you're your authentic self, I probably can. So I think I belong there just like anybody else.
You have been in the position of some real storms that the nation has faced over the last few years. You were, kind of front and center of the fight, the COVID fight. And as we saw very quickly, money was dispensed, blowing around in the wind at that time. There was a lot going on. And I'm curious if you can share with us what you had to do during that time, how difficult it was, and what people wouldn't know that had to go on to get us through that crisis.
Family and friends. My best friend flew in to help with the almost 2-year-old. My mother flew in to help with the almost 2-year-old. It takes a village when you're doing these jobs. It is exciting and exhilarating, but it is taxing on one's family. So you really need a lot of support to do those things. But I've been doing some version of these shutdown debt budget talks for almost 20 years. I'm tired, but it's important. I have the relationships in Congress. I've worked with many of them on both sides of the aisle for a long time, so that helps when we now have a divided government. I've done divided government. People want to be listened to. Sure, I don't agree with a lot the other side of the aisle has to offer, but I can promise you we would not have come to a deal, and a lot of people in our families and our communities would have been hurt if interest rates would have gone up, if one couldn't get treasury notes. Imagine the chaos we would have faced had we not. And if you think that, and if you remember who is behind what you're trying to do, failure is not an option, and you have a president who reminds you, come to a deal. So the personal relationships help. I've been in this town a long time, and the same people I had to work with. One of the people the speaker sent is my parents' congressman to negotiate with, so he had to be nice to me. I'm a distant constituent, and I told the speaker that after the Oval Office, and the president named me as one of the people, and he named Congressman Graves, and he was like, "Oh no." So relationships. It's like anything else. DC operates like any place else and anything else in your life. Relationships. No one's going to walk in a room with people you never met and come to a deal to help stave off economic calamity.
What's the magic that you've been able to use? You know, you were touted for being able to, as you suggest there, have bipartisan relationships. And I would say to you that DC used to be about relationships. I can't really genuinely say that anymore. But there are a few of you who found out how to navigate, those choppy waters. What do you think it is for you?
Well, one, it is very unusual to have a president who served 36 years in the Senate, 8 more as vice president. So he gives cover for congressional relations in his own background. I did 15 years on the Appropriations Committee. When they have shutdowns and things where the government shuts down, think of me. My life has been ruined for about 20 years due to that. People ask, what do you do? I was like, you hear when the government shuts down? That's when my life becomes not great. And I need you to pray for me because I'm not getting paid while trying to reopen the government. So that has been some version of my life for a long time. But that means I know how it is. We get new members who come in, they're like, you know what we're going to do? We're going to hold everything hostage. It's like, I want you to go read the papers and the history books from 4 years ago when that was tried, 6 years ago when that was tried, when Clinton went through it with Gingrich. It doesn't work out your way. People don't like that. They at least want their government to operate. They want people to pick up the phone when they call. So when you are the side that wants things to operate and to move, you win because the American people are on your side. They don't want this. They don't like it. They don't understand why DC has to operate that way. But I will tell you what it does do. And the bad side of my brain sometimes thinks just a minority of people want this to happen. It makes you think your government doesn't work. And it sows discord in what you think of your government. And that makes me sad because that works. So even though we get through these things, it leads some people to disengage from a civic point of view, to not vote, to not apply for government services because you just think it's all broken. And I do think there are a small amount of people who come to DC and that's what their goal is.
Can you put in historical context what it means for you to sit in the seat you sit in right now?
Well, I'm the only one who's worn this curly fro to sit in that office. There was one other black gentleman, Frank Raines, who was the OMB director, who's of my race. There was one woman before. I get to combine both of them and be the first African American woman to serve as the president's budget director. Mind you, the budget comes through my office and my agency, but also the management, how we manage the government, how we bring contracting to communities, how we set policies on minority contracts, all purchasing power of the government. We buy $600 billion worth of stuff. What are our priorities when we do that? My agency gets to opine on those things. Federal workers, when we ask you to come back into work. So all of those management things come through the Office of Management and Budget, and regulations. If you have a regulatory regulation that's significant, it has to come through my office to be cleared. So it's really the nerve center of the federal government. And when I talk to young people and they ask, what's your advice? Don't limit yourself. 5-10-year plans are great, but I didn't know what an appropriations committee was. I didn't know what an OMB is. Had I just trudged along a path that I thought was like what I was supposed to do, I would have missed these opportunities.
Just so you know, we'll come out and have a little Q&A a little later. So if you have some questions, we'll come out and give you an opportunity to ask this young lady those questions. James Carville made what has become pop culture lore now. It's the economy, stupid. I want you to talk a little bit about what I think in my conversations with folks in the administration, the Biden administration, and Democrats in general just don't do well enough, and that is, tout the gains, tout the shiny objects at times for as concerned as people should be and are in some cases about the economy. If you think back, because we're very myopic in our thought often, you think back 6 months ago, 8 months ago, everybody was very concerned I see Ken Holly back there. That's a big money man, and he was over there shaking his head like, "Yes, yes, we were. Yes, we were." That this thing was going to collapse. That
Yeah.
we were going to not only see perhaps recession but depression, and it seems to have found some steadier waters. Talk to us a little bit about that.
It's I call it the recession that never was, but it does this thing. It gets in people's psyches though, and I told someone my future world. I'm not an economist. I'm the one member of the president's economic team that's not an economist. I'd like to call myself the muscle in the operations, and I work with Congress a lot out of the team, and I told the president when we were talking about this job, I was like, you got Janet Yellen. You don't need economists over at the Office of Management and Budget. Let Janet take care of that side, and we'll help make sure Janet can pay the U.S.'s bills when, I and others get to negotiate the debt ceiling. So I'm the operations. But what I do see, I'd like to be a forecaster in another life, because forecasters have not gotten it right, not a lot of them. They've been calling for a recession, and the president said, I think we can land what we like to call in the White House a soft landing. And we seem to be doing that, where inflation is moderating and we're not killing the American worker in the process. No economist in this country would have told you we'd add over 13 million jobs out of COVID. No other developed nation is seeing the employment gains and the moderation of inflation at the levels that we are. Usually when the Fed raises interest rates, inflation moderates, you do not see job numbers do what they are doing with companies still hiring at this clip. Now, we've seen some moderation under 200,000 jobs gain, but you want to see that as inflation comes under control. So we might actually stick to the soft landing. We are not taking a victory lap because that
Nor
would
should
be,
you.
yeah, that
Yeah.
would be a mistake. But things when the president talks about going after competition, that helps when we talk about this economic recovery, making sure that companies don't consolidate, we watch them for antitrust. That means you all have more options as consumers. Prices, there's competition in the market, so prices moderate. All these things are part of the economic agenda. But you're right, when we talk about competition, junk fees, what is that? I'm not sure people see the thread in how we're trying to land this soft landing when we talk about the various pieces of competition and other things. But it's our job to make sure, people get it. That what we would have, you never get credit in DC also for what you prevented. And Republicans, you spent all this money on the rescue plan. Where would we be now had we not? Where would state and local governments be had we not done a relief fund for them? So fine, blame us for spending, but it took us 4 or 5 years to get out of the Great Recession when Obama started his presidency. And we passed a recovery plan, but the lesson people in town learned who worked on that, it was too small. And we were not going to make that mistake again. And I think we made the right move when this president came in and worked with Speaker Pelosi at the time and Leader Schumer to get a rescue plan out. I think it put this country on the right path.
I remind politicians on both sides of the aisle, you can't take credit for something and then run away from it if it doesn't work your way, which we know happens all the time on both sides of the aisle, to
Both
be
sides.
fair, right? I'm wondering, though, the delicate balance of dealing with industries and entities that are not governmental, but absolutely will affect the way the government has to move, the way the economy moves. I think about, you mentioned job creation and job security really can't be legislated because oftentimes those are private industries. Give us a sense of how you, also within the management of government, have to deal with outside entities that play such an important role and part in how not only the administration fares, but how government fares.
Yeah, I talked a little about making sure we are uber focused on antitrust, making sure that the playing field, especially in the tech industry, we are thinking about the American consumer, not just what's beneficial for these companies' bottom lines, keeping competition in the market for consumers. Those things matter for regular people. And I think this administration has been more aggressive in that front than a lot of others. Some of our independent agencies are critical here. My child goes to daycare at the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. We're going after junk fees. Who thinks somebody who just had an overdraft can pay $50 in a fine? Why am I paying $50 a day for a resort fee for not a resort? We call these junk fees. What are they? They are junk. They are money makers, and we're going after them. And those are small things in pockets, but that add to money people have. We as a government can influence people have in their pockets. The Federal Trade Administration, the head there, Linda Khan, is going after these companies for trade violations. And look, our trade policy, what we do, bringing jobs back to America. One of the jobs offices the president started when he took over is in my agency, Made in America. We're gonna make it here. It upset a lot of our allies. The manufacturing that we lost, we are seeing manufacturing as part of the jobs revolution coming back and onshoring in this country. And that means you don't need a 4-year college degree to get a 6-figure job. College, 4-year college is not for everyone. What we also have to do, and what our budget says, we need more apprenticeships. And also more black, brown people in these union jobs. It wasn't always easy for us to get in a 4 or 5-year apprenticeship in unions. But this president, with his relationships with the unions, have said we've got to do better and get a diverse group into these union jobs, which are often safer and higher paid from a job loss perspective. So all these pieces are landing into, I think, an economic story that is working. But you're right. We have to do a better job of telling it. It's what people feel. It's not just the economy stupid. It's how you feel about it. So we can tout numbers. How do people feel? And I think we have a little more work to do to make sure people feel and see what we have come out of with COVID.
Is compromise and being conciliatory to the other side of the aisle more difficult during an election year? The reason I ask that is I would tell President Obama, who, as you know, was conciliatory at heart. I really do believe it's part of his makeup. But I used to tell him that when we had the opportunity to sit, they would invite some of us to a gathering, maybe 20 of us. It was off the record. We could not report what we talked about. It was our way of getting to really kind of have some insight into where they were going. We could report on the insight, but not on the conversation. And I used to say to him, Mr. President, that's great, but if the other side isn't willing to be conciliatory, you can't be that alone. If they're not willing to get to the table, does it become more difficult? Because the more they kind of put you in the woodshed and hold you at arm's length, they can then say, see what they're not doing.
So when you know them personally, it's easier because you do have conversations where they go, I got to say this thing, but it's okay. Give it a day. Debt ceiling, we had to take a pause over a weekend, and everybody had to have feelings. But you kind of know because you've built relationships, and you try to back channels. Back channeling in D.C. is always important, where you have a friend on the outside who can talk to both sides, and you're like, can you call and see what's going on? So it's actually easier because you have a little more insight into what they really are trying to aim at. Also, you kind of know it's politics as usual. But you're right. Since I got to D.C. 22 years ago, it has changed where people, when I got here, most members, a lot of them still lived in D.C. They sent their children to school together. That became a political vulnerability for them. So a lot of them, soon as session's over, they get on a plane, they go home to see their families. And that does not lead to a lot of collegiality amongst them. So it has changed in a way, but it is easy. I'm an optimist, but also I know him well enough where it's a little less personal. Now, if you're watching it on TV and you see this stuff, you're mad. I think people do want their side to fight back a little more. I get that. Like, who isn't angry when you think somebody's being beaten up on? I would see what happened during the Obama administration. I get mad. Like, really? She can't wear sleeveless? Like, we're doing that now? And you get mad, about stuff, and people you go like, that was like over the top. But when you're in it, like you know these people, and it's easier to kind of put that noise to the side, especially when you're trying to do something like debt ceiling, and everybody, it's politics, and you get it.
Let me take a black folk family break for a moment. Y'all know how we are about bees and wasps. Y'all all right in the back row there? Everything good? Look, they were getting ready to tear this place down. I was like, let me check and make sure we're all right. Okay, all right. I'm glad to see you.
Got to duck,
glad
roll,
to see y'all all right.
And then run.
Tell them, because you're going to be hearing this phrase a lot, Bidenomics. It's catchphrase time, and so give us a sense of what the White House wants that to mean to America.
So a good way to get on the president's wrong side is to come in and speak government talk. Don't throw an acronym. Don't do it. He's like, we have to talk to people like people talk. And people don't speak like you all speak in D.C. And we need to relate to people where they are. And that is just great advice to hear from him on a regular basis. We might be doing great things, but we can't communicate that to people. What's the point of doing it? And Bidenomics is Joe Biden at his best. Joe Biden came from Scranton, if you didn't know. I mean, he only says it a few times. And just like Clinton, regular people live there. And it's how he views the world. We can either keep going down this trajectory of thinking the only way for this country to make it is to make sure those at the very top make more money and then dribble down what they don't want to keep and to keep people a little happy. I think we used to call that trickle down. This president truly believes if we grow the middle class, give people a leg up, as his dad said, a little breathing room, then we're going to be good. This country was best when we had a strong middle class. And, think about it. Regular people, nurses, teachers, firefighters, what do they pay? If they have a mortgage, maybe an effective tax rate, they pay 18%, 20% of what they take home. If you are a billionaire, there's one study, 400 billionaires, 8%. Sure, they pay more, but look how much more they're worth. 8% effective tax rate. That's not fair. That is not fair. So Bidenomics is like, what is fair and what is right in this country? And if we don't change, we're not going to continue being the leaders in this world and making sure regular people have a shot. Also, the things we're ensuring that people can make a good living, not a decent, a good living, if they don't choose to go to college. Those kind of things, that is Bidenomics. Making sure that regular folks get a little breathing room and have a way to give themselves a leg up. People don't want government handouts. They want a shot. They just want a shot. They want a level playing field, and they want the government to help them when it's necessary. People shouldn't go hungry in this country. Help them when it's necessary, but get out of their way and give them a little breathing room. And this president is the first Democrat, I think, to really talk about taxes. We used to run away from this. Now we talk about tax fairness. Is it right for billionaires to pay less of a tax rate than people who go to work and get taxed at a higher percentage? Like, we're leaning into that because it's not fair. It is just absolutely not fair. And you hear the other side talking about cutting spending. We can't be on this trajectory. I got another idea. Maybe we deal with Social Security and Medicare and all our other problems by asking, some of our billionaire friends to pay a little more. Maybe we don't have to cut child care. Maybe we don't have to cut Head Start. Maybe we can ask a few folks in this country to do a little more.
Let me ask you this. I think it's important, and I think what we don't do enough of is give people an insight to the person who sits in the Oval. Not the one that you see on TV or in soundbite, but for those who are blessed enough to kind of have some real insight. Just a quick story, and then I'd love for you to give some insight to who he is. I had met President Biden when he was vice president to Barack Obama and had many interactions throughout their administration. And I was doing a interview with him as he was a candidate and doing a virtual town hall with him. And so I pressed him a little bit about reparations and some other things. And so we got off the phone, and I got a phone call like 3 minutes after we were done, and they said the vice president would like to talk to you. And I was like, oh, I done messed up now, right? So I pick up the phone, and he says, Ed, and I kid you not, he kept me on the phone. I know you'll appreciate
Sounds
this.
right.
For 35 minutes, because he really believed that what he was trying to convey might be misunderstood. And he really wanted me, and in turn, I would think by extension, to make sure that that message was conveyed in the way he meant it. And I really thought that was extraordinary. Not that he called. I've had many a call to say, but he genuinely wanted me to understand what he meant. Give people, as I move out toward the audience, a thought of who you see, not as the president, but as the person.
So I'm a cabinet member who got an opportunity to serve. President nominated me as the number 2 at Office of Management and Budget, and then I became the number 1. I had to tell the president before he nominated me that I was expecting my first child, waited to the last biological moment, and did not blink an eye. Did not blink an eye. The love of family for this man runs deep. And like as a personal, people tell you like it's okay to have a family in these jobs. Most people do not mean it. He meant it. Now I didn't get a whole bunch of time off when I had her. I believe I was at a cabinet meeting 12 days after I had her. But you know why I went? He had a gift for her. And during debt ceiling, I tried to sneak out of the Oval to go pick her up. And he was like, where are you going? I said, well, I guess I'm going to call somebody to do pickup. And 30 minutes later, he was like, you found somebody she picked up? I said, she's picked up. She's over in my office. He's like, she can come over here. I said, you see that Resolute desk? I can't pay for that. So we're just going to leave her in my office. But that's Joe Biden. And he tells all his senior staff, and most of the cabinet officials don't have small children like I do. He said, if it's family, you leave. I don't need to know why. I trust you, but if it's family, you leave. Now, sometimes I tell the chief of staff, I was like, he said, if it's family, I'm out. I got to go. But that's Joe Biden. Love of family allowed, me to have a family and do this job. That's a big deal. That's not heard of. That's not normal. And that is because of who he is. So that's a little personal insight from Joe Biden. I wouldn't be in this job if he was not the president and didn't create that environment.
Yeah, I think we do ourselves a disservice a little bit in this nation to really not get some insight to the people that sit in that office in terms of who they are beyond just kind of, the political side of who they are and the sound bites we hear. Thank you so much. We're going to let you get out of here. We don't want you falling out like Anderson .Paak in that Silk Sonic video, so we're going to let you get out of here. But thank you so much for your time and effort, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you, Ed.